Hello and welcome to PMCLounge.com. This is Lounge Fever, a series of videos where I try to answer your questions. And the good thing about this series is that sometimes the answer to the questions lead to more questions. And that is exactly what happened when we talked about how you can cancel a sprint. And I see that there's significant confusion around this topic. So I thought let's try and cover this once again. Can you cancel a sprint on real life project? That was the first question that I saw on Facebook community of PMC Lounge. Yes, you can. On real life projects, sprints do get cancelled. It is a rare situation, but it does happen. And I'll also go over the question that I received. To answer that question, I talked about canceling a sprint. Now, before we go over that, I'd like to remind you that this video is part of the Lounge Fever series where we try to answer your question, and this series is all about Agile FAQs. So we have answered your questions for different areas, different knowledge areas and all that. But this video is going to reside in the playlist that is going to contain questions only on Agile. So first link in the description will be a link to that playlist. You can check that out. The second link is going to be about all the videos that we have done so far on Agile topics. And these videos are going to be helpful if you are preparing for your PMP exam, the Agile part of the PMP exam, right? That is something that all these videos are going to cover. So second link in the description, check that playlist out. And the third link will be specific to the PMI-ACP. So there are specific videos that we have created just for PMI-ACP. So you can check that playlist out, the third link in the description. And of course, since this is an agile topic, it will help you with your PMP exam preparation. It is going to help you with your PMI ACP exam preparation as well. All right, enough said. Let's get down to business. So the question in question, and this question itself caused a lot of confusion, and we'll go over it. But this is a question that I received. These are not my words. So even if I see something that's wrong here, I cannot correct this and come up with my own wordings for this question because this is something that I received. Now here's the question. We know that all Scrum events have a time box. We definitely know that. And each sprint can be, let's say, a 30-day time box. Now in this first sentence itself, a lot of people had a confusion, and specifically it led to a heated debate on our Facebook community that how can there be a 30-day time box. I think similar confusion was there in YouTube comments as well. Well, the fact is, like I said, this is a question that I received, so I cannot reword this, but I can definitely tell you that for most organizations out there, in fact, I'm yet to come across an organization that does not have time box measured in the unit of weeks. So this 30-day is actually 4 weeks and 2 days, but that's not how time boxes work. Time boxes typically are measured in the unit of weeks. So this is actually going to be 28-day time box because it's a 4-week long sprint. It can be a 2-week long sprint. It can be a 3-week long sprint. It can be 6-week long sprint as well. But like I said, time boxes are measured in weeks. So typically you will not have a 30-day time box out there. But if you are from an organization that does 30-day time boxes, more power to you. Go ahead. You can do whatever you want. But like I said, since this was a question that I received, I cannot go ahead and reword it. So I keep it as it is, as I have received it. So for the agile Nazis who cannot stand a 30-day time box written here, you should assume that this is a 28-day time box. Now the question continues that, but during the course of the sprint, if the team discovers an emergency situation or some other issue that needs to be looked into, does the team wait for the time box to end? Now two things here. One, which was something that I am aware of, is that if you have an emergency situation, you need to define what that emergency situation is. What is this issue about? Is this a 2 lines of code change? If yes, then there is ample buffer in the ongoing sprint where the team can look into it and continue on with their sprint. They don't have to cancel the sprint altogether. The answer to this question from my perspective was that I understood the question as a situation that, where the world is on fire, where the team needs to decide whether they continue to work on the sprint or do they wait for the time box to end. Well, that is also the reason why you're asking a question like this, because if it was an emergency situation or some other issue which was just a two lines of code change, then you would of course make it while continuing working on your sprint. But the reason you're asking this question, I think, is because you have a situation where your sprint team needs to look into the issue, and this is not a two lines of code change. This is a major disaster. The world is on fire, and when the world is on fire, you cannot wait for the time box to end. So that's how I look at this question. I am okay if you're asking me about a 30-day time box. I am okay if you're saying that there is an emergency situation or some other issue without defining how big of a situation this really is. So my assumption here is that it is a 28-day time box. My assumption here is that the situation is so bad that the world is on fire and you guys cannot continue working on your sprint and waiting for the time box to end. That would be plain stupid. So let's move on. So one thing, like I said earlier, you cannot wait for the time box to end because your main aim is not to follow textbooks. It is not to follow something somebody defined somewhere in an ideal world that a time box should be 4 weeks long, and that is why you are going to continue with 4 weeks. Your main aim is to deliver value. And what is of utmost value here right now when the world is on fire? Is it of utmost value for you to continue with your sprint and wait for the 4 weeks of time box to end? Of course not. Your main aim is to deliver value, and what's of utmost value right now is not to introduce red tapeism in the name of process, but to fix the issue. So you're not going to wait for your 4 weeks time box to end, or by all means, if you have a 30-day sprint, and I know agile Nazis are not going to agree with that, but whatever your sprint time box is, you should not wait for your sprint time box to end. Your main aim is to deliver value. It is not to introduce red tapeism in the form of processes. A quick reminder, please hit the like button to feed the YouTube algorithm. Okay, so let's talk about another person involved in this process known as a product owner. Product owner needs to step in here because when we are talking about a situation that you are in the middle of a sprint, you have a 28-day long sprint or 4 week long sprint, and you are right now on day 10 and the world is right now on fire. Your team cannot work on your sprint anymore because they need to go back and look into this issue that has been introduced. This is not a two lines of code change. This requires your team to focus, concentrate solely on this issue because it is a big issue. It is an issue that is causing $1 million loss for the customer every single day. So what happens then? The product owner needs to step in because the product owner has the authority to cancel the sprint before the time box is over. So this is not a decision that the scrum master is going to take. This is not a decision that the project manager or agile project manager is going to take. This is not a decision that your release train engineer is going to take. Of course, all of these folks can influence this decision, but ultimately it is the decision of the product owner because it is only the product owner's authority to be able to cancel a sprint. Now, when you cancel a sprint review is still held. And this sprint review is to basically review the items that are done as well as the ones that are placed back into the product backlog. Remember, the sprint backlog basically fetches items from the product backlog. And if there are items on the sprint backlog which are not complete, then those items go back to the product backlog. So it was a 28-day long sprint or 30-day long sprint for the person who asked this question. If you are on day 10 and you need to cancel the sprint, then whatever items that are in your sprint backlog which were not complete will go back to the product backlog. Whatever items that are done are going to be reviewed as part of the sprint review. Now, here are some things that you need to keep in mind when you cancel a sprint. Number one is the fact that canceling a sprint is a one-off rare situation. This is not the norm. This is not something that you would see every now and then, right? And that is also the reason why some of the people commented on the video saying that, hey, you cannot cancel a sprint. I've never seen a sprint being canceled. Well, I have personally been through a cancelled sprint, and that is why I can speak from experience and I can speak from the textbooks that talk about how to cancel a sprint. So you can actually cancel a sprint on real life projects. This is not a textbook concept, but of course this is a one-off rare situation. This is not the norm. This happens when the world is on fire. This happens when the issue is bigger than two lines of code change. This happens when the customer is facing $1 million loss every single day. On day 10 of your 28-day, or for the person who asked the question, 30-day sprint, you cannot wait for the next 2 weeks or 18 days or 20 days, whatever, just to complete your time box. Even if you're on day 10, you will have to cancel your sprint. But like I said, this is not the norm. This is a rare situation. It can demotivate the team considering how much energy it wastes. Because when you're doing a sprint, there's a lot of effort involved, a lot of people are involved, a lot of work is done, a lot of planning is done to ensure the sprint goes smoothly. And when you are canceling a sprint in between, of course it is going to demotivate the team. And finally, it can also increase distrust on Scrum, especially in an already hesitant organization. So if you work in an organization where not everyone has the agile mindset, in fact agile is the new kid on the block, and a lot of people still have their doubts on agile, in that kind of environment, if you cancel a sprint, of course it is going to increase distrust on Scrum. And this can also result in the overall loss of confidence in the effectiveness of Scrum, because people are going to raise questions. They are going to say, hey, what kind of new process are you bringing to the table that is actually causing sprint cancellation, and that is actually causing $1 million losses every single day, right? So these are some of the reasons that you should consider before you take the final decision. Before of course you're not going to take the final decision if you're not a product owner, but before a sprint is cancelled, before you bite the bullet, these are some of the things that you need to consider. If you're looking for PMP exam book recommendations, you can head over to pmclounge.com/resources. That's where the most updated books are listed. These are the ones that we recommend. These are the ones that thousands of our community members have used to clear their exams. And that's all that I had in this video. I hope you got value out of it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Hit the bell icon to stay notified every time we upload new content. And I hope you've already hit the like button, because it helps the channel, it helps feed the algorithm. And don't forget to check out the website pmclounge.com, your number one free PMP and project management resource. Thank you.